Hi guys, my name is Victoria, and today I'm here to talk about all of the books that I read in June. So June is probably my best reading month so far as number of books read. I DNF'd one book though, and I did not make it quite through another book, so those I both have read kind of half of. But I have 9 books total to talk about, including those 2. So overall this month I actually finished 7 books, which I was expecting June to be a good reading month for me because it was my first month off from work, from my summer break from being a teacher, and I knew I was going to really dedicate this month to reading because the month of July is a lot busier for me. So I did have an excellent reading month, the best so far. If you're curious about the stats and kind of different genres I'm reading, I'm going to start saying those in my wrap-ups as well. If I can figure it out, I'll put a little graphic or something that you can see. So this month I read 5 YA books, 2 middle grade books, and 2 adult books, which I think just this year in general I've been reading a lot of YA, and that's just because I have had some series that I've been going through that have been on my TBR for a really long time, and yeah, somehow I'm just reading a lot more YA, which has been going fine. I'm not complaining about that or anything. It's just kind of different for me because I go through periods of reading more adult also. So right now I'm just in a YA mood. To break down the genres that I read 2 sci-fi thrillers, 4 YA or middle grade fantasy, and 1 adult contemporary romance, which is new and exciting for me, 1 manga, and 1 YA dystopian. And again, a couple of those I just haven't finished yet, but I'm counting them in my wrap-up because I did read them at least partially. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the book that I DNF'd and just kind of get it out of the way. But I DNF'd Descendant of the Crane by Joan He. Joanne, we're gonna call her Joan He for the purpose of this video. I should find out how to actually pronounce her name. But this just wasn't my cup of tea, I think, for a few reasons. So the basic plot of this book is actually very simple. There is a young princess who is going to basically become the queen of her land, and her father has died, and she suspects that her father has been murdered, but kind of nobody else in her kingdom really believes her about that. Nobody else is on board with that theory, and so her goal is to make people believe that yes, my father was murdered and I want to find out who his killer is. Meanwhile, there's also the politics of the nation, and there's a little bit of magic happening in this realm. The people who have magic in this book are kind of pariahs of society, so you have some drama going on in the background with them and some political intrigue happening. Meanwhile, the main focus of the story is around this court trial and learning about who killed her father. I just want you to know that I tried really hard with this book. I don't DNF things lightly. I'm really good at making myself read things. In fact, I used to never DNF books. I would just always push myself through them. But lately I've just changed that about my reading life, and I think it's been for the better. But this was a book that 50% of the way through, I still just didn't care. It was just too slow for me. I was very bored. The writing kind of just jumps you into the story, and while I don't have a problem with that specifically, I thought this just didn't do it in a good way. I've heard this gets better from some people, but then some reviews say it doesn't get better, and so I was just too torn between the two different types of reviews that I've been seeing, and I just decided I'm gonna put it down for now. Maybe someday I'll try it again, but I'm thinking for now this is gonna get donated to a charity shop, and hopefully someone will like it more than I did. I rated it 2 stars on Goodreads, even though I didn't finish it. That's kind of how I felt 50% of the way through, that this was more of a 2-star read for me. So there you go. Very sad. I really wanted to like this book. It's a beautiful cover. I feel like a story that I could get behind, but the execution of it just didn't work for me. So sad days. And then I just wanted to let you know the book that I did not finish, but I'm still working my way through, and it'll be part of my July wrap-up, is Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins, the third book in the Hunger Games trilogy. I'm actually really close to finishing this. I've probably got like a third left of this book, and I'm liking it a lot. It's making me really sad though. It's really intense right now. But yeah, so I read a lot of this, but did not quite finish it. And now let's move on to the books that I did finish in the month of June. The first of those being Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This book is so shiny, I'm gonna have to make sure that I hold it at a good angle for you. It's just, it's blinding. So, I loved Illuminae, the first book in the series. Gemina, I was not as excited about because I felt like there was a little bit of a bait and switch. I really liked the characters of Katie and Ezra, and I felt like Illuminae really leaves you on a cliffhanger, and I was expecting it to be thrown back into their story and to learn more about that. I was really excited for that. But then the second volume introduces two new characters on a different ship, the Heimdall, I think. And I didn't like these characters as much. I found the main female protagonist to be kind of whiny and annoying, and I just didn't click with these characters as much as I liked the ones in Illuminae. And I was really excited about following the ones in Illuminae, and I just felt like this wasn't what I was wanting in the sequel. I didn't want a whole brand new story. I wanted the same characters to be followed. We do see Katie and Ezra just a little bit in this book, but not really until the very end. And I was kind of salty about it, to be honest. I think another reason I didn't like this one as much was because I did the audiobook pretty much entirely. I barely delved into the actual physical copy, even though I own it, but I was just still wrapping up my school year in the beginning of the month, so I was cleaning my classroom and listening to this on audiobook, and the audiobook fell flat for me too. The dialogue in this book is kind of cheesy as it is, and then for some reason the audiobook just kind of enhances that and really reminds me how cheesy some of the dialogue is. And yeah, it just was not the experience that I had with Illuminae, which was sad. I think I gave this 4 stars on Goodreads, but I feel like in my heart of hearts, it's probably more of a 3, but we're gonna give it the benefit of the doubt because I really did enjoy the fast-paced ending, and there were some twists and turns that I was like, wow. It was just, I guess, just not what I wanted. However, I do fully intend on reading Obsidio in the month of July. I am going to finish this trilogy, and I'm excited about it, so we will see how that goes. The next book I want to talk about is a manga volume, and that is Fruits Basket Volume 4 by, I always forget, Natsuki Takaya. I'm slowly making my way through Fruits Basket. They're just cute and fluffy, and I don't always feel compelled to pick them up right away. I had quite a bit of space between the 3rd volume and the 4th volume, so I had a little bit of memory gap. I couldn't remember some of the characters and who was who. However, I think like this 4th volume even a little more than the 3rd volume, maybe because it is set in summer and I was right in the summer mode. And yeah, so I don't have a lot to say about these. I'm just kind of making my way through them and having fun. I'm not really like dissecting them. There's not a lot to dissect there. If you don't know the main plot of Fruits Basket, there's basically this young lady who befriends a strange family, and they have this magical ability where if the opposite sex hugs them, they turn into an animal of the zodiac. And so you find out kind of which characters are which zodiac animal, and sometimes they get accidentally hugged and they turn into the animal. It's definitely less about the plot than it is just about the relationships between the characters, and yeah, there's just a lot of characters and a lot of relationship dynamics. So yeah, since it's the 4th volume, I can't say too much about the plot, but that is basically this series. And it's just cute and fluffy, and I'm just gonna keep on reading them. Next up, I read a new release book of 2019, and that is The Bride Test by Helen Huang. I had been interested in Helen Huang because everybody was just nuts about the Kiss Quotient last year. And I'm not really a romance reader. That's not a genre that I dive into or that I find myself gravitating towards. But for some reason, I felt like maybe I would like this author based on some of the things that I heard. And I have to say, this was one of my biggest surprises that I really enjoyed this. I, for some reason, just expected to roll my eyes at it and to feel awkward while reading it. And I will say, like, the steamy scenes, which there are steamy scenes, they are awkward, and I'm just not used to reading things like that. I'm not used to reading sexy books, but this was fun. It was definitely more about the plot than the sexy times, which I think is why I liked it, is because the characters were deep and the plot was interesting, and I just really wanted to know what was going to happen with these characters and these relationships. This book follows Kai and Esme. Kai is a young Vietnamese American who has autism, and his mother has sort of had it with him not dating and just kind of keeping to himself and not wanting to get married. And so she takes it into her own hands to find a young lady in Vietnam to bring her back to America so that Kai can meet her, and hopefully there will be some sparks. So she finds Esme. Esme is actually a cleaning lady, and she comes from just very modest background, and she is a little bit skeptical about coming to America and feels a little weird about it. But her family kind of pressures her into it, and her family says, you will never have another chance to go to America in your life. This is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. At least just go and hang out in California and have a good time and see some stuff. And then you can come back to Vietnam if you don't like the guy. So Esme decides to accept it and meets Kai, and then our plot unfolds from there. I really enjoyed this whole book and didn't mind the premise of an arranged marriage in the end. However, there were some things that I felt forced because there's an arranged marriage at the center of the plot, and it's just kind of a strange plot to read in this 21st century. But I didn't hate it. I did like it. But I will say there was a little bit of some insta-love and just, I don't know, something inorganic about the relationship. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it just didn't quite feel organic in like a cute way that I would like from my rom-coms. But yeah, this was good. It was well written. I cared about the characters, and everything kind of gets wrapped up in a neat little bow at the end. I didn't agree with some ways that this ended, but they're kind of little details. So I would recommend it if you're into this kind of thing. Go for it. I didn't know that I was going to like it, so I ended up really enjoying it. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. The next book that I read in the month of June was the second book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series, which is entitled Sea of Monsters by Rick Riordan. This is just so much fun. It continues to be fun, and I have really no critiques about it. It was just as fun and unique and original as I felt the first book was. I'm always impressed at the way Rick Riordan can kind of encapsulate a young 12-year-old boy and all of his various thoughts and funny anecdotes, and it's just exactly what a 12-year-old boy would think about these situations, I would say. In this book, Percy Jackson has to figure out how to save Camp Half-Blood because it has been threatened. It is no longer a protected place, and monsters are breaking in and wreaking havoc, and so it is not a safe place anymore. So Percy goes on a quest to figure out how to make the camp protected again against evil monsters, and he has to venture into the Sea of Monsters to go retrieve a certain item. I just continue to be impressed by Rick Riordan and his writing, and it's just so much fun. I rated this second volume 5 stars. The next book I would like to talk about is Recursion by Blake Crouch. This just came out in the month of June, and if you haven't read it yet, go read it because this was one of my favorite books of the month by far. This is an adult sci-fi thriller. I'd never read Blake Crouch before, and I'm really glad that I have now, and I gotta go read all of the backlist that he has. So must get my hands on more Blake Crouch. But this book follows two main characters, Barry Sutton and Helena Smith. And Barry Sutton, when we meet him, he is an NYPD cop. And when we first encounter him, he is trying to talk a woman off of a ledge of a building. She's about to throw herself off of the building because she is suffering from what the media has deemed false memory syndrome. What is happening to people with false memory syndrome is that people wake up one day and they have suddenly all of these memories of an alternate life that they've never lived. And they describe the memories as kind of being like black and white, like kind of like they're watching a movie, but they know that these things have happened. And so they have two sets of memories. They have a set of memories that they think has been their reality so far. And then they have this other set of memories of a completely different life that they've lived. And they don't know what's real. And they don't know if they can even trust their own memories. And so we meet Barry Sutton, who is trying to talk a woman off of a ledge of a building who is experiencing this. And then we meet Helena Smith, and Helena, I think I pronounce it Helena. Helena Smith is a neuroscientist who has dedicated her life to the study of memory and the brain and the ways that the brain processes your memories. And her whole motivation in life is actually to help eradicate Alzheimer's because her mother is suffering from Alzheimer's. And so there we are thrown into the story, and we discover what this false memory syndrome is and who is kind of making it happen and how do we make this stop. And it just gets really complicated and crazy and goes in places that I couldn't have ever predicted, and it was just an amazing thriller. This is the second adult thriller that I've read, and the first one was really disappointing, and so I am so glad I found a thriller that I liked. I think maybe I will like the more sci-fi angled thrillers rather than like, I don't know, family dynamics or like murder thrillers. This one had a lot of interesting backdrop with the science part of it. So I really enjoyed this so much. I couldn't recommend this highly enough. I think this is an excellent book. 5 stars if you couldn't guess already. I also have a full book review of this book. I also have a book review of The Bride Test too, so I will link those down below in case you're interested in checking those out. The next book that I have to talk about is the third book in the Wizard of Earthsea series, and that is The Farthest Shore by Ursula K. Le Guin. I had really been enjoying this series up until this book. I didn't hate this book. However, it didn't grab me in the way that the first 2 books did. The first 2 books in this series are A Wizard of Earthsea and The Tombs of Atuan, and both of those were 5-star reads for me. They both just kind of blew me away. I loved the depth of them and the story and the characters and just loved everything about them. And then I read this book, and this one is a solid 3-star book for me. But it was just surprising after really just loving the series and then getting to this one and just not finding the same connection with it. So we follow our main character, Ged, in this story a little closer. In this book, Ged is older. He's an older wizard. He's lived some life. He's seen some things. He's a little bit jaded by the world and the evil in the world. And he picks up this young man to travel with him named Aaron. And they are on a quest to figure out what's happening with the magic in their world. Basically, wizards are losing their magic. Essentially, what's happening is people are losing their magic abilities. Societies are not valuing magic anymore. And powerful people are just waking up one day kind of forgetting how to do magic and not really knowing why they should do magic. And it's just kind of being stripped away from the whole world of Earthsea. And so Ged and Aaron go on a quest to figure out why that's happening. The reason why I didn't connect with this book as much is mainly because of the really heavy hitting philosophy. I have really enjoyed the first 2 books because philosophy was more embedded in the story. I felt like this book was way more focused on the philosophy, and we just have like really long conversations about philosophy and Ursula K. Le Guin's own philosophy on death and life. I believe she subscribed very much to like a Buddhist belief in her life, And so that's really, really evident here and really heavily pronounced. I would have liked more story and less philosophy, or at least to kind of like weave them in a little better with each other. And I think part of the problem was that I don't agree with her philosophy. I have a very different life philosophy. So without going too much into that, I was maybe a little biased against that too, but it was still a beautiful story. There are dragons involved, and the dragons in this book are pretty epic and amazing, and play a really important role. And so I really liked the probably like second half of this book more than the first half. I really struggled to want to read the first half of this book. This book just takes a long time to set things up, and it takes a while for us, like 150 pages for us to actually get on our journey, and it's not that long of a book. So I definitely enjoyed the second half more than I enjoyed the first half. Overall, this was a 3-star read for me. And the last book that I finished in the month of June was the 6th book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. This was a reread for me, although it might as well have been a brand new read because I didn't remember very much. However, I did remember that this was one of my favorite books when I was a kid, and I think it still remains one of my favorite books in the series, and that is The Silver Chair by C.S. Lewis. The Silver Chair, I think, takes so many of my favorite things about Narnia and it puts them all together. Creatures that are weird and lovable, philosophy and epic speeches from characters about life and goodness and evil. Also main protagonists that are lovable and flawed, and they learn things and they grow. So Jill and Eustace are the characters that we follow in this book. Eustace is definitely one of my favorite characters as far as like his character arc and his growth. And then Jill was a lot of fun too. Jill learns a lot and grows in amazing ways. Also the silver chair and the prince who is trapped in this chair that like controls him. I just really liked the whole plot. An evil queen is back in this book, kind of like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I think probably this is a contender for my favorite book in the series, although I don't know, I have to kind of think about that a little bit more. I also have one more book to reread. I'm finally going to be wrapping this up. I'll be reading The Last Battle next month. And The Last Battle I remember virtually nothing about. So that'll be interesting. This is definitely kind of like reading it for the first time. But I loved The Silver Chair. 5 out of 5 stars. What can I say? I love Narnia. Narnia has my heart. Those are all the books that I read in the month of June. Let me know if you read any of these books. If you are wanting to read any of these books, let me know what you read in the month of June. I would love to know. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please be sure to like it if you did, and also to subscribe to my channel if you're new here. I also want to say thank you for 300 subscribers. I just hit that mark, which is crazy. I've had some shout outs from some different booktubers, which have kind of made a few more people find my channel. So if you're new here, welcome. Thank you for being here. I love sharing books with you, and I'm just so honored and blessed that I get to continue to make videos for you. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye-bye.